So now in closing, I want to talk about when to persist and when to let go. Now, overall, I would have to say most people really err on letting go too soon and giving up too soon. And quite frankly, if you're going to make a mistake somehow, I would rather make a mistake on being too persistent than backing off too soon. Because a lot of times just fear gets in the way. Also, so many people that I know have not come to know Jesus except much persistence. I know a lot of people that it took years of their friend or their family member talking to them, and just so many stories I can recall of people saying things to their friends of saying, "Don't ever invite me to church," and then the person wound up coming and loving it and changing their whole life. I mean, a lot of people at our church right now said that to somebody in the process. One of my best friends, Susan, who's on our leadership team, screamed at the person inviting her on a regular basis. It's pretty funny. I'd sit there. I wasn't the main person sharing, it was another person, but a lot of times I'd be sitting there and she would just scream at the person, "Shut up, don't ask me anymore, don't, stop it." Like, it was comical, quite frankly. So don't let these things deter you from sharing, because you can change somebody's life. And so don't let, the fear of rejection or whatever, people are worth it, lives are changed forever. And so some of this is just getting where you have so much love in your heart that if somebody's like mean like that, you just feel for them. If somebody's like angry or mean, they're hurting. My gosh, why would somebody act like that? Like, well, unless they're hurting, why would they be so angry or walled or defensive? As soon as I see that in somebody, I know they're hurting. People, do you know what I'm saying? Otherwise, if you're not afraid, and you don't have guards, people can have a normal conversation. People can say no, without yelling about it or what have you. So if somebody gets super defensive, a great way to be is to just respond and going, "Oh, they're hurting." So it just makes you want to love them more. Actually, as people dig in their heels, what you want to do is go back to that seek first to understand thing, right? What you don't want to do is clash with them and get into a debate. "Why won't you go?" Or, "You're an idiot. Why don't you come to church? What are you so closed for?" It doesn't, the more they dig their heels in, if you dig your heels, they're going to dig their heels in more. So a good way is just to dial back and just go, "Oh gosh, you seem really emotional about this. How are you feeling? I'd like to understand. I guess I'm a little bit curious. I don't quite understand why you're so upset. Are you hurt? What's bothering you?" Do you know what I'm saying? Where you just kind of seek to understand and to get the walls down and that kind of thing before you hit on them again about it or whatever. Get them to just, bomb them with love. Just know that, a lot of times, I did gang ministry for many years, and, I was working with teenagers that had these stony faces, and I would just know that I was bombing them with love. So even though they looked like they got all walled off, I would just be, "I know that love's getting in there," so you tell yourself that, because it's true. There's nothing more powerful than the love of God. Its charity never fails. The love of God never fails. So anyway, don't let your ego get in the mix, because that'll definitely mess things up. So I want to go to a record where Jesus is commissioning his 12 disciples and sending them out to spread the message, the good news about Jesus, in Matthew 10, and let's start in verse 7. He says, "And as you go, preach, saying, the kingdom of heaven is at hand." He said, "Heal the sick, cleanse the lepers, raise the dead, cast out demons. Freely you have received, freely give. Provide neither gold, nor silver, nor copper in your money belts, nor bag for your journey, nor 2 tunics, nor sandals, nor staffs, for a worker is worthy of his food." So this is kind of cool, because Jesus is talking about healing people, casting out demons, all that. You know what? A big part of what's exciting about doing this and being a world changer and being committed to this is when you step out in faith to make a difference in people's lives, you're going to see miracles like you never have before. That's where, I mean, seriously, this is an area that you can grow where I've seen it, where you're really committed to reaching out and asking God to show you where to speak. You'll hear from God in ways you never heard from God before. And God will show you things like when to lay hands on people. I've seen people get instantly healed. I've seen people get saved right there in public places and everything else. I'm telling you, you're in for some powerful, exciting stuff. There's nothing more fulfilling. So Jesus is telling them to do that. Go out. And then he says, freely you've received, freely give. Jesus has blessed us, so why wouldn't we want to just give it out as freely as we've received it, right? Let's go down and continue in verse 11. It says, now whatever city or town you enter, inquire who in it is worthy and stay there until you go out. And when you go into a household, greet it. Okay. So I want to talk about this. It says that the word inquire is to search. And then worthy, it's interesting. It says worthy is befitting. So in a way, when you only have so much time, right? So obviously the desire is you want to be as much as you can with people that are open and hungry to hear. You know, make your time count. And so that's why, like the inquire means to search. You could search by asking in prayer, asking God, where do I go? Who do I talk to? You know, and honestly, this is such a lovely way to learn to walk by revelation. You know, like sometimes I'll look through my phone list, the people that you've been praying for, hopefully, on a regular basis since we've been doing this series. And God will just put some on your heart where you're looking at the list and praying. And all of a sudden, this works for me. I'll feel a pull in my heart towards somebody and I go, all of a sudden, I'll think, well, maybe that's God speaking that this is the person to go speak to. And you know, it doesn't hurt to try it and just see. It's a way you can learn how to hear from God. But then also, as much as you can, you want to be spending time with people that are open. So in looking, maybe if you've just been spending your time with one person and they're close, mix it up a little bit. Maybe give that person a little break, you know, from telling them, come to church, and ask God to meet new people. Like maybe you've talked to all your friends a zillion times. Well, ask God to meet some new friends, you know, like Susan was talking about in the making friends section, you know, that you want to be out there making new friends and asking God to show you people that are hungry. So anyway, then it says, and you stay there. So clearly, if you're staying at somebody's house, it's not like a 10-minute conversation. This could be days or what have you going by. So you're probably spending some time really talking to people as far as the message of Jesus when they were staying there. It says, and it says to greet it. Remember, we want to be friendly people, approachable people. In verse 13, it says, if the household is worthy or fitting, you know, or open, they're eager, it says, let your peace come upon it. But if it's not worthy, let your peace return to you. So it's kind of interesting. That word peace means harmony between people, or it means peace from Jesus giving you peace, or also it means safe and prosperous. So it's kind of cool because you're gonna go in there with Jesus's peace to bless them and be in harmony. And then it says, if they don't want to hear, then you leave peacefully. You don't leave all mad, you know, like angry or something because they haven't heard, you know, they haven't heard about Jesus. If you're getting provoked that people aren't hearing, you should take a look at that. You know, if you're just coming from a place of love, it shouldn't be upsetting to you, you know, that people don't hear. Some people aren't going to. That's just the way that it's going to go. Not everybody you're going to share about Jesus is going to hear. But you just want to give people the opportunity and give it to them the opportunity, you know, a bunch of times before you give up on them. But it shouldn't be like your ego is in this, because it's not that they're rejecting you, you know. And we'll take a look at that as well. But and then in verse 14 it says, and whoever does not receive you nor hear your words, when you depart from that house or city, shake the dust from your feet. You just get over it and move on and look for other hungry people that really you could change their life. Okay, so I want to go to another one where it says in Acts 17 and verse 32, it says, and when they heard of the resurrection of the dead, this is actually speaking of about that same record that we talked about before with the Apostle Paul. it says, when they heard of the resurrection of the dead, some mocked, some made fun. Some people are going to make fun, so what? Would it kill you? Is it worth, honestly, it's worth changing someone's life forever to risk that maybe somebody goes, ha ha ha, you believe in Jesus? What a fool. It goes, poor people, they're going to live without Jesus. I'm sorry. Like, it should, if anything, bring up some compassion of how sad it is that you're going to miss out on that. But some people will mock, and then it says, while others said, we will hear you again on this matter. Saying, sometimes people say, I don't know, but there's an open door to speak more, They're not completely there, they're not ready to come to church with you, but they haven't said, get out of my life forever, so. And then in verse 33, it said, so Paul departed from among them. However, some men joined them and believed, among them Dionysius the Areopagite and a woman named Damaris and others with them. So some people will believe. So it's worth it. Okay, I want to take you to another record that talks about how you just have to, you don't want to miss opportunities. If anything, you want to be persistent, you want to walk out where God's telling you want to be bold. And so there's a wonderful record here about Philip and the eunuch in Acts 8 in verse 26. It says, now an angel of the Lord spoke to Philip, saying, arise and go to the south along the road which goes down from Jerusalem to Gaza. This is desert. So he arose and went. See what I'm saying? We want to practice this. It's actually really exciting to just get in the habit of, when you're praying, just don't poo-poo it out. So you're praying, you're asking God, who do I talk to, or where do I go, or whatever. And you see an image of something. It could be, my gosh, we do this in our leadership training program, the ambassador program, all the time. People get images of toys, or they get an image of gray and orange or something like that, and they don't know what that is, but they just, or they see a coffee shop, so they go, okay, I think maybe this is a coffee shop to go talk to. I remember once one of the people got an image of a woman hunched over like a bar with a cup of coffee, and the girl that I was sharing faith with, and son of a gun, we were walking around, we saw this lady who looked exactly like the picture of the image that person had in their mind. And so a lot of times the way that God speaks, it just is like a thought that comes in your head, and hey, it doesn't hurt to walk out on it and just see if maybe God's speaking, because you can change a life. So Philip did, he went for it. We want to get in the habit of saying yes, of asking God and then going for it, not being timid. Anyway, so it says he went, and then it says, and behold, a man of Ethiopia, a eunuch of great authority under Candace, the queen of the Ethiopians, who had charge of all her treasury, had come to Jerusalem to worship. This is a pretty fancy dude. This is a guy in charge of all the money for the Candace, the queen of the Ethiopians. So not a small role, fancy guy. So sometimes, like, again, it's, people go, oh, see, he's rich, he doesn't need anything, And then it says in verse 28, he was returning from Jerusalem and sitting in his chariot. So it's like being a stretch limo or something like that. It says he was reading Isaiah the prophet. Then the Spirit said to Philip, again, Philip's hearing from God, it says, go near and overtake this chariot. So again, what if there was a big stretch limousine or something and somebody told you, go up there, knock on the window, go talk to that person, We want to be where we're just like, okay, what's the worst that could happen if I try that, But Philip went, which I love. And in verse 30, so Philip ran to him and heard him reading the prophet Isaiah and said, do you understand what you're reading? Look, again, the principles that we saw and that we talked about. Asking questions to reveal needs, right? He saw what the guy was doing, that he's reading Isaiah, and said, do you understand? He didn't just talk his head off right away. He just kind of checked in to see what the guy's need was, and the guy was open. It said, the Ethiopian, it said, and he said, how can I unless someone guides me? And that's true. Somebody has to guide you to know the scriptures and to know Jesus. And then it says, and he asked Philip to come up and sit with him. The place in the scripture which he read was this: he was led as a sheep to the slaughter, and as a lamb before its shearer is silent, so he opened not his mouth. In his humiliation his justice was taken away. Who will declare his generation? For his life is taken from the earth. So the eunuch answered Philip and said, I ask you, of whom does the prophet say this, of himself or some other man? And then Philip opened his mouth and at the beginning of Scripture preached Jesus to him. This was a prophecy about the coming of Jesus, so Philip had an open door and wound up being bold and sharing the wonderful message of Jesus. So we want to be bold and not be hesitant. I want to go to one more, which kind of gives you a sense of when to persist and when to let go. In 1 Corinthians 3 and in verse 5. This is a section of Scripture where people were saying, I'm of Paul, I'm of Apollos, meaning like whoever told you about Jesus, that they were kind of bragging, like who talked to them about it. And so Paul's responding by saying, who then is Paul, and who is Apollos, but ministers, servants through whom you believed, as the Lord gave to each one. He's like, the big deal is not exactly like that we're glorifying the people that spoke to us. It says in verse 6, I planted, Apollos watered, but God gave the increase. So there's a few things here that we're going to learn from this. He's saying sometimes what it is there's multiple people that share the gospel before somebody says yes. You know, you've got maybe somebody that planted seeds years ago. There's a girl in our church that there's somebody from the state that she just moved in that just, you know, she was an atheist, but somebody in, I forget what state it's from, was sharing some things with her about Jesus. And so here she is. She got to California and she started looking around for a church. So it's just sort of like one person planted the seeds and then she came to us and some people from our church are watering, you know. So sometimes it's a group or community effort from, doesn't have to all be in your church. It could be different churches or different people. It's just, we're all trying to get people to move towards Jesus is the big goal. It's not about the church you're going to, but it's helping people to know who Jesus is. So he's saying, but it's God that gives the increase. So one of the things is, I love the planting analogy, because when you're working with plants, like somebody plants and somebody waters, it matters how you prepare the soil. Remember, we're talking about the fact that we want to create the best possible environment for somebody to perhaps believe and come to know Jesus. So I'm not very good with plants. So I know a lot about the fact that it makes a big difference how you treat a plant as to whether it grows. Like if you are somebody that knows a lot about plants and spends a lot of time and you prepare the soil, like I know, you know, sometimes you need to aerate the soil or add nutrients or fertilizer or that kind of thing, and what kind of soil you use, you know, is it rich or is it, you know, like desert? Is it like sand? So what kind of soil you plant in has an effect on whether something comes up and grows. And also water, how much water it gets. All of these things help something to grow or to not grow, right? So that's why all through this workshop we've been talking about how can we get better and more effective at trying to help people to have an environment where they say yes and grow. But ultimately, it's between that person and God. It says it's God that gives the increase when it comes to growth. You cannot, it won't work, you know. If you look at a plant, you've planted it and you put the good soil and the water and you've taken good and then a little sprout comes up. And if you start getting mad that that sprout isn't coming up fast enough, right? You just go, it's like crazy. It's just like, what? I've been working and working on this person and all we got is this little teeny sprout. It won't work, right? To grab it and yank it out of the dirt, right? It's not helpful. So just sort of understanding that the way we relate to this is we do the best we can at preparing the soil and watering, but how people grow and how fast, we have no control over that. People have free will, and it's also God that's really going to do the big work. We just do the prepping work, but it's God that's really going to do the deliverance. He's the one that gets people saved through his son Jesus Christ, right? So it's God that gives the increase in that, to keep that in mind. So there's a few lessons that we see in that. And then it says in verse 7, so neither he who plants is anything. It's not, you know, our jobs aren't really the big deal in a way compared to God's job. It is a big deal, but not compared to the job that God does. It says, nor he who waters, but God who gives the increase. Now he who plants and he who waters are one on the same team, right? So each one will receive his own reward according to his labor. You know, it says that there's rewards in all eternity for speaking about Jesus. How cool is that? I don't know what those are going to look like, but I bet you they'll be good. You know, rewards for all eternity. There is nothing more valuable when you think about all the things you could aspire to in life. And it's great to have other goals, career goals, all that. But honestly, no matter what you do for a living, there is nothing that like impacting somebody for all eternity, that you told somebody about Jesus, they have eternal life because of you. Or people's lives that have changed and transformed and healed. People that have gone from being, like when I think of all the people that I think about, that I know that I've seen their lives change because of Jesus, where maybe I played a part of it or somebody else in our church did. And it's just powerful to see people that were depressed, that didn't feel good about who they were as human beings, that were miserable and in pain, and now they love life. They're excited, they're full of joy. Or people that had terrible relationships, brokenhearted, that they were breaking hearts or getting their heart broken, and now they have great relationships, great marriages, great friendships, and love their lives. I mean, just think, this is the impact that you can have. What would that be like for you to be able to look around and see that you've changed lives forever, that it's not just that Jesus changed your life, but that you can share that and pass on that healing to other people so that they can have a rich, full life that Jesus promised, life more abundantly now, as well as life for all eternity. How exciting is that? So it says that we're one that will receive the reward. And then in verse 9 it says, we are God's fellow workers. We're like on the team God. But guess what? He does the hard part. But we're like, you know, working along. I like to think about it this way. Like I got God here, Jesus here, holding hands. And I go, okay, guys, where are we going today? You know, as far as just getting excited about the mission, that we're on a mission from God. And then it says, we're God's fellow workers. And then it's interesting. It says, you are God's field, you are God's building. So what's really cool about this is, here we are, it's saying that we're planting and watering for God to give the increase, that we're workers together with God. But then while we're doing it, it says we're his field. Meaning that while we're serving, God's planting in us to be fruitful. How cool is that? It's a paradox. Normally you'd think you give and you have less, right? It's just the opposite with God. God promises, as we walk out in this ministry of reconciliation, God plants in us that we grow in our walk, we grow in joy, we grow in purpose, that our faith grows, that we see more miracles, all of that. So it's actually, you get more when you give and when you walk out in your ministry of reconciliation. There's just nothing like it, guys. This is exciting. So I hope that this workshop has just started a little fire in your heart, hopefully a big fire in your heart for this, to get out there, to try it, to see that you can have an impact, you can learn, you can grow, you can get better at this. Part of the great thing is being a part of a fellowship and a community is that we can help each other, you know. A lot of times it's great to go out with teams. We do this in our leadership training program where we get teams of 2 to go out and talk to people, meet people, and be there with God's love. And then they give each other a little feedback and input of just like debriefing afterwards on, hey, did you think God was speaking here? And you kind of compare notes to say, yeah, I kind of thought God was speaking, and then darn it, I didn't walk out on it. Or, hey, God was speaking, how cool was that? We walked out on it and this person got saved, or they got healed, or we prayed for them. You know, we've had people got revelation to go to a park at night, at 9 o'clock at night. There was a person that was walking their dog that was feeling suicidal. Their husband had left. They were at the very bottom. And our people went out there and prayed for them. And this girl was like, wow, I was at my last ropes and praying and felt like God sent you. And this person got saved and their life changed forever and got healed and set free. I'm telling you, this can happen. It's an amazing, exciting way to live life. So I hope that this encouraged you. Jesus said, remember what we started with. He said, the harvest is plentiful. There are way more people that want to know about Jesus, even though they don't know yet that they want to know, but that they're hungry for answers that will be open. It says the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. There's so few people that say yes, that want to care and want to make a difference. Be a laborer. Be somebody that says yes, that wants to change the world one life at a time. There's so much hurt out there. Let's pass on healing. Let's stop and interrupt the cycle of hurt and pass on Jesus and his healing and make a difference and make an impact. That we can be laborers, but also that we bring others along to be laborers, that we pray for this, that we have plenty of laborers. Jesus tells us to do it. It's available. Let's do it, guys. What do you say?